Good morning, I'm Kenneth Moden.
And I'm Elizabeth Hur. Here are the top 5 things to know this Monday. Number 1, the rising tensions between Iran and the U.S.
Iran says it will no longer abide by the 2015 nuclear deal, and President Trump is doubling down on his threat to target Iran's cultural sites if the Iranians retaliate for the U.S. drone strike near the Baghdad airport that killed their top military leader.
Meanwhile, the president is threatening to punish Iraq if it tries to expel U.S. troops, saying the U.S. would not leave until Iraq pays for the military bases the U.S. built.
Number 2, 3 Americans have been killed after an attack on a military base in Kenya.
The victims were identified as a U.S. service member and 2 Defense Department contractors. The Somali terror group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for targeting the air bases where U.S. forces are supporting African troops in the fight against terrorism.
Al-Shabaab is affiliated with Al-Qaeda and has no links to Iran. We head to Pennsylvania for number 3.
5 people were killed and dozens injured when authorities say a packed bus lost control and started a chain reaction crash on the Pennsylvania Turnpike near Pittsburgh.
UPS says 2 of his drivers were among the dead. 1 had been driving for the company for 28 years.
Number 4, it's back to work today, and there's a new list of the hottest jobs for 2020.
LinkedIn has labeled artificial intelligence specialist as the country's fastest growing position for 2020 in its annual emerging jobs report.
Also on the list is cybersecurity specialist, Silicon Alley worker, robotics engineers, and customer success specialist. The report says most of the jobs are on the coasts, either in the Bay Area or New York City.
And finally, number 5, Hollywood's Golden Night, the Golden Globe Awards.
The emotional moment of the night was when Tom Hanks broke down in tears accepting the Cecil B. DeMille Award. The actor saying that he knows he is a blessed man, not because of his awards, but because of his family, who was seated with him all night long.
It's Morning America, and good morning. Happy Monday. Great to have Elizabeth Hur here. And let's get right to that big story, the worldwide implications after the U.S. drone strike, an attack that killed Iran's top military leader.
Iran now says it will no longer abide by the 2015 nuclear deal, and lawmakers in Iraq have taken a symbolic vote to expel American troops from the country.
Meanwhile, President Trump late Sunday doubled down on his controversial threat to target Iran's cultural sites if the Iranians retaliate, which could be considered a war crime.
Here at home, the Homeland Security Department is taking precautions because of concern about a potential Iranian attack in the U.S., including a possible cyber attack.
Let's bring in ABC's Karina Mitchell with the new details and developments. Karina, good morning.
Good morning, Kenneth and Elizabeth. Iran made a new threat overnight, vowing to get revenge. It all comes as President Trump appears to contradict his own Secretary of State regarding how the U.S. may respond. Overnight, President Trump doubling down on striking cultural sites in Iran as tensions escalate in the Middle East after the killing of Iran's top military commander. While flying back from his holiday trip to Florida, the president told reporters, "They're allowed to kill our people. They're allowed to torture and maim our people. They're allowed to use roadside bombs and blow up our people. And we're not allowed to touch their cultural site. It doesn't work that way." Earlier, the president said the U.S. has targeted 52 Iranian sites, some of them cultural sites. That comment drew criticism because targeting cultural sites could be considered a war crime under international agreements.
As you know, the Geneva Conventions outlaw attacks on cultural objects and places of worship. Our own DoD war manual discusses protection of cultural property. So why is the president threatening Iran with war crimes?
We'll behave inside the system. We always have, and we always will.
Meanwhile, more crowds lined the streets in Tehran this morning to mourn the death of General Qasem Soleimani. As all 290 members of Iran's parliament chanted, quote, "Death to America." The general who is replacing Soleimani is vowing to, quote, "take revenge," as the country announces it will no longer abide by the uranium enrichment limits in the 2015 nuclear deal, a move which could put Iran on course to accumulate enough fuel for an atomic bomb. The back-and-forth threats come after President Trump ordered the strike on Soleimani near the Baghdad airport last week. U.S. officials claim they had intelligence that he was going to carry out acts that would cost American lives.
It's impossible to overstate the significance of the attack that takes out Qasem Soleimani. This is bigger than bin Laden. It's bigger than Baghdadi.
In response, Iraq's parliament, in a non-binding decision, has voted to expel U.S. troops from the country. The bill does not have the backing of the outgoing prime minister in Iraq, but President Trump also told reporters on Air Force One that the U.S. military is not leaving Iraq unless the Iraqis pay for the military bases that the U.S. has built, saying it cost billions of dollars to build long before my time. We're not leaving unless they pay us back for it. Back here at home, Democrats are criticizing the president after he appeared to declare his tweets would serve as notification to the United States Congress that should Iran strike any U.S. person or target, the United States will quickly and fully strike back. And perhaps in a disproportionate manner, such legal notice is not required, but it is given nevertheless.
You know, I hate to say this, but I think it's President Trump raising his middle finger at the Congress.
And with tensions rising in the Middle East, the Homeland Security Department is warning about the potential for attacks here at home. Security has been stepped up at key locations in major cities. No specific threat has been identified, but officials say Iran does have potential assets inside the U.S., and Iran has significant cyber warfare capabilities. Kenneth, Elizabeth?
All right, Karina Mitchell there. Thank you. Let's bring in ABC News foreign correspondent Julia McFarland across the pond in the London Bureau for more. Julia, good morning to you. So we've seen that image of the red flag flying over a mosque. Just how unprecedented is this?
Good morning, Kenneth. Well, that was the first time that that kind of red flag was hoisted over that very holy mosque in the city of Qom in Iran. And the red flag, that symbolizes vengeance for the death of someone who's been killed unjustly. And what this does really is it infuses Iran's battles fighting U.S. interests in the region, the legacy of Qasem Soleimani, with a kind of holy symbolism. Don't forget, these foreign adventures by the IRGC have recently been deeply unpopular with parts of Iranian society who have resented them as an expense that Iran cannot afford at a time of crippling sanctions. And those people voiced that unhappiness with huge protests in the same cities where this weekend we saw thousands of people taking to the streets for Qasem Soleimani's funeral processions. Cities like vows and Mashhad, which has been the scene of anti-government protests since 2017. Now, that footage over the weekend showing those endless crowds marching is being shared on the Supreme Leader Ali Ayatollah Khamenei's Twitter feed all weekend. Be under no illusion, guys, that the Iranian regime is trying to spin this as a renewed vote of confidence in its leadership. It's really hard not to see what's happening right now as having a consequence of driving the Iranian people back into the arms of the regime.
And Julia, let's talk about Iraq, the Iraq country. The parliament has voted to expel American troops, but the vote is non-binding. What does that mean?
Right, so it was unclear whether this extraordinary parliamentary session was going to go ahead because it was boycotted by Sunni and Kurdish legislators, but the minimum threshold was met and they passed that non-binding resolution calling for the expulsion of foreign troops. Now, some 5,000 U.S. soldiers are currently in Iraq as part of the global coalition to fight against ISIS. That coalition suspended operations in Iraq just ahead of the vote.
Julia, as you know, we've been talking a lot about President Trump's threat to attack Iranian cultural sites. We know that this could be considered a war crime.
Yeah, Kenneth, there are a number of conventions and treaties which the U.S. has signed, has ratified as a party to, which outlaws the targeting, the deliberate targeting of protected cultural sites. And in Iran, there are dozens of treasures and sites of antiquities and UNESCO World Heritage sites. You have the city of Persepolis, which dates back to 500 years before the birth of Christ. That was a city founded by Darius the Great. You have places like the ancient fort of Bam, which looks like a life-size version of a sandcastle. You have places like Shiraz and Isfahan, where if you go to the Met in New York, you see antiquities from those places because so many people feel that the treasures in Iran, they belong to the world and not just the Iranian people. That threat by President Trump is not only going down incredibly negatively in Iran, but around the world.
And again, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said that the U.S. would abide by the law, but wouldn't tell George on this week, on Sunday, what that exactly meant, how far they would go. And some would even say that this is another example of the people around the president in his circle keeping him from doing something potentially illegal here. But we will see what happens and if he truly does target those 52 cultural sites that he mentioned on Twitter. Julia, thank you. We appreciate it. And President Trump is making it clear that he believes those cultural sites are fair game despite international law banning such attacks.
On Air Force One last night, the president also threatened to slap sanctions on Iraq if U.S. troops are forced to leave the country. And he said Iraq will have to pay for a military base built by the U.S.
Overnight, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced that the House will vote this week to limit the president's authority to take action against Iran, calling last week's airstrike provocative and disproportionate. ABC's David Wright has more reaction to the president's comments.
That sort of saber-rattling worries Democrats.
I really worry that the actions the president took will get us into what he calls another endless war in the Middle East. He promised we wouldn't have that, and I think we're closer to that now because of his actions.
The president has indeed repeatedly called for ending costly foreign wars.
The plan is to get out of endless wars, to bring our soldiers back home, to not be policing agents all over the world.
He said so as recently as New Year's Eve, specifically referring to Iran.
I want to have peace. I like peace. And Iran should want peace more than anybody.
But that night at Mar-a-Lago, the wheels were already in motion. After the president saw the protests at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad and blamed Iran, according to the New York Times, aides presented the president with a variety of options. The Times reports he chose the most extreme one. Around 5 p.m. January 2nd, he made the final call, authorizing the drone strike that killed General Soleimani. Some Democrats say there's no mystery about the timing, days before the impeachment process is set to resume.
We know he's deeply upset about that, and I think people are reasonably asking, why this moment? Why does he pick now to take this highly inflammatory, highly dangerous action that moves us closer to war?
The president is now back in Washington, where the impeachment process is slightly in limbo. Senator Lindsey Graham on Sunday proposed changing Senate rules to allow an impeachment trial to begin, even though House Democrats have yet to forward the articles of impeachment. But it's not clear that the Republicans in the Senate have the votes to do that. David Wright, ABC News, West Palm Beach.
All right, David. As the U.S. braces for Iran to retaliate, the Homeland Security Department issued a new domestic terrorism bulletin, putting authorities here at home on heightened alert.
U.S. officials say an attack on the homeland may come with little or no warning, so security has been stepped up in major cities like New York. No specific threat has been identified, but officials say Iran does have potential assets inside the U.S., and there are concerns about potential cyber attacks aimed at banks or the government.
And Customs and Border Protection says allegations that are singling out and stopping Iranian Americans as they try to enter the country are false. The Council on American Islamic Relations says Sunday that more than 60 Iranians and Iranian Americans were detained and questioned at length at the border crossing in Blaine, Washington, and that those detained said their passports were confiscated and they were questioned about their political views and allegiances.
CBP said there was an average 2-hour wait at Blaine Saturday evening simply due to an increased number of people and fewer staff members during the holidays. The agency is operating with an enhanced posture due to the current threat, but said it is still protecting the civil rights of those passing through the points of entry nationwide.
I'm sure we will find out more details about this as it goes on. They say it's false. Obviously, another group says, no, we experienced it and this happened. And so we will continue to ask questions there. Well, coming up, Hollywood kicks off award season with the Golden Globes. The early request from host Ricky Gervais that nearly every single winner ignored.
But first, the bushfire emergency in Australia, how celebrities are helping this morning after this.
We are back with the scene of a home explosion in Detroit. Officials say 6 people were inside at the time of the blast over the weekend. They survived but suffered burns and smoke inhalation. An investigation is underway to find out what caused the explosion. One possible explanation is that it was the result of a gas leak.
Overseas, some violent scenes in the capital of Venezuela. U.S.-backed opposition leader Juan Guaido was blocked from entering his country's congressional building for a special session. When he tried to scale a fence to gain entry, Guaido was stopped by guards using riot shields. He and his allies are locked in a battle over Venezuela's future with President Nicolas Maduro.
About 100 U.S. firefighters are in Australia now, with more on the way. The devastating wildfires have killed at least 24 people and destroyed hundreds of homes. The family of the late conservationist Steve Irwin says it has rescued and treated more than 90,000 animals. Meanwhile, several celebrities at last night's Golden Globes pledged or called for donations. Actress Nicole Kidman thanked Americans for their support for her native country.
Back here at home, tens of thousands of people marched across the Brooklyn Bridge to show solidarity for New York City's Jewish community. The demonstration follows a series of anti-Semitic attacks in the region in the last month. They chanted, "No hate, no fear. Our Jewish families are welcome here." And we are now hearing from a sailor stranded at sea during a fateful trip from Japan to Hawaii.
He was among 3 people without communications during their week-long ordeal. Tom George from our station in Honolulu has their story.
The Pete Brown you see today.
This is from on the boat, yeah. So.
Looking a lot different than this Pete who started his long journey in November.
There's Jimmy over there.
Along with his crew, he set sail from Japan to Hawaii. But after hitting rough seas, the mast came dismantled and later a big wave rolled them over.
The water was coming up on her, getting up to waist high, and we're still upside down.
The boat tipped back upright again, but was damaged. Supplies were getting low. Eventually, a boat came by, so they threw up a signal flare.
And then it didn't see us, and it just kept on going. Oh my! We were thinking, oh man, this is terrible.
Eventually, they lost all contact and began to fear the worst.
Watched the stars and prayed and hoped that either way, my family was going to be okay.
Finally, days later, another boat. This time they used mirrors to catch its attention, and it worked. They were rescued.
I was crying, and all of us, everybody, we were all crying on the boat.
This video shows that daring rescue. The Coast Guard came and they were taken to Hawaii. Grateful to his rescuers and family and friends from Tennessee who had been desperately trying to find him.
Every time I would look at these messages, I would cry, or start looking through it, just the people that were telling stories about me, and just a lot of love.
The best part, reuniting with his wife and son, who just flew in from Taiwan.
It was a happy ending, and God answered prayer.
But there's one more thing before they go home, enjoying a little time together in Hawaii, just in time for his son to turn 8.
On the 6th, we'll have a birthday party.
Tom George, KITV4, Island News.
Just incredible there. Let's check our notifications now, starting with this dolphin getting up close and personal with swimmers at a beach in Australia. Obviously, we've been telling you about the devastating wildfires that are impacting much of the country, but here, just an incredible, cool image that we just need to see after seeing all of those destructive fires move through. And it happened there, this counter happened in New South Wales. One local official said the dolphins and other marine life are frequent visitors, and beachgoers are very respectful.
Next to Japan, where diners can start looking forward to some expensive sushi. The so-called Tuna King just paid $1.8 million at auction for a tuna that weighed nearly 610 pounds. The Tuna King runs a successful sushi restaurant chain. Last year, he set a record paying more than $3 million for a similarly sized tuna.
A lot of sushi. Next to some bears helping themselves, the Tennessee family found the mom and her cubs ransacking their minivan after they had left the door open. No one was hurt. The bears made off with some snacks.
Finland's new prime minister is proposing a major change to the nation's work schedule. Sanna Marin wants to move to a 4-day week and 6-hour days, just 24 hours on the job. Right now, Finns work a 5-day, 40 hours a week. Marin says the idea here could be the next step in working life and would allow people to spend more time with their families.
That's our question of the day. What do you think about moving to a 4-day work week? Is it enough to make you want to move to Finland? Tell us what you think in the comments.
Tweet us.
Yeah, tweet us at ABC News Live. We want to hear from you.
Sign me up.
And take a look at this McDonald's burger. Can you believe it's 20 years old?
What?
A Utah man has kept it in case for 2 decades, and it's kind of just still intact. I don't even see any mold.
How is that possible?
I guess he didn't let much air get to it.
In the meeting, they were talking about how the hamburger stayed intact, but the pickles kind of went bad. Pickle, eek. Yeah. So that's the receipt proving when he got it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Hollywood. got the awards train up and running on that long and winding path to the Oscars.
There was no meat there, definitely no McDonald's hamburgers. While last night's Golden Globes was a big night for newcomers, some longtime favorites like Tom Hanks and Brad Pitt, Hollywood was singing a familiar and fun tune. Will Gans breaks it down.
Hollywood's Golden Night hitting all the right notes. Sort of. Host Ricky Gervais back hosting for the 5th time. Not worried about censoring himself this go around.
If you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God.
Some stars ignoring that advice, like Ellen DeGeneres.
Because people just go on and 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 on, and you're like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be quick.
Ellen taking home the honorary Globe for the Carol Burnett Award, an emotional night all around in Hollywood.
A man is... Sorry. A man is blessed. A man is blessed with a family sitting down front like that.
Full of tears and surprises.
I said I had money on this not happening. Completely stumped.
Olivia Colman upsetting faves Jen Aniston and Nicole Kidman for Best TV Actress Drama. And Rami Youssef beating out Michael Douglas, Bill Hader, and Paul Rudd.
I know you guys haven't seen my show. Everyone's like, is this an editor?
Newcomer Awkwafina also picking up an award.
If I fall upon hard times, I can sell this, so that's good.
Awkwafina making history as the first woman of Asian descent to win Best Actress in a film. Though the Globes awarded some more than familiar faces as well. Joaquin Phoenix winning Best Actor for Joker. Renee Zellweger Best Actress for playing Judy Garland in Judy. And Brad Pitt winning Supporting Actor for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, taking a moment in his speech to shout out his co-star and pal, Leonardo DiCaprio, and weigh in on that whole Titanic controversy.
Still, I would have shared the raft.
The biggest awards of the night on the TV side went to Fleabag for comedy and Succession, my favorite, for drama. And for film, 1917 won for drama, and for comedy, Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It was a big show.
A big show indeed, and a lot of people talking about fashion.
Yep.
And some
good ones.
Some good ones.
Yeah.
And then some
not so good ones.
Not so good
but who are we to judge? Hey, coming up, a busy day ahead on this Monday, January 6th.
Plus, we will soon be riding in a pod like this one from Jurassic World. We'll show you the new tech after this.
I would buy one. Here's what to watch out for today. President Trump is scheduled to participate in a credentialing ceremony for newly appointed ambassadors to Washington before receiving an intelligence briefing and having lunch with Vice President Mike Pence.
Kelly Loeffler is set to become the newest U.S. Senator from Georgia. The wealthy businesswoman and Republican donor appointed by Georgia Governor Brian Kemp to replace Johnny Isakson will be sworn in on the Senate floor with a unique distinction. Her first vote could be on whether or not to remove the president from office.
The case that's become the face of the Me Too movement begins today in New York City. Jury selection gets underway in Harvey Weinstein's sex assault trial. The movie executive is accused of raping a woman in 2013 and forcing himself on a production assistant in 2006. He claims both incidents were consensual. Dozens of women have accused Weinstein of sexual misconduct dating back decades. Weinstein faces life in prison if convicted.
And the world's largest technology conference gets underway this week. We are talking about the Consumer Electronics Show beginning Tuesday with all sorts of new gadgets, announcements, and we are already hearing about new televisions, phones, and other smart devices.
Fun. So there are a few of them that we, as you just mentioned, we're hearing about, including this one that's like a Segway that reminds us of Jurassic World. You remember the Segway in that one?
They call it the S-Pod.
Okay.
I guess we're looking at it right there.
Yep.
Some have said it's like the Lazy Boy lounge chair with wheels. I don't know. Is this really the future?
I think so. We got to get around. We might as well have like a protective. It didn't help these kids out in Jurassic World because I remember it was like ripped apart. But let's see. Also, Charmin. Apparently, the line earlier we said was flushed with like entertainment or something like that because
so that's what it looks like.
Because they're making a joke on the TP that's the robot is carrying. This robot is called a Rollbot.
Get it?
The Rollbot will operates by smartphone. It will bring you a roll of toilet paper in your time of need. I don't know how it would open the door.
Exactly. And then it somehow senses smelly toilets.
Oh, right. It
Okay.
can. It does. That's smelly toilets. I mean, smelliness happening in the bathroom, and it can take care of that for you with some.
Yeah.
Give you a little scented something to make it.
Okay.
Also, there's a TP, a VIP.
Get it? P.
Robot that you can wear these virtual reality goggles. And the goggles, if you're at like a concert or something, you gotta rush to the bathroom, you won't miss any of the concert or the event. Pretty cool.
Lots of things to look forward to.
We'll be watching out for that and see what else comes out of that big old consumer electronics event there.
Yes.
All right, that is it for us on this Monday. It's great to have Elizabeth Hur here. Everybody get some rest.
Wonderful day.
Or start your work day, whatever you're gonna do.
Yes. Have a great day.
Don't you want to make sure it's a 4-day work week soon?
Oh,
We
can
need
we
that.
work on that here?
We'll see ya.
Okay.